You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the town of Swanzey.
call to order the March 26, 2026 meeting of the Swanzey Planning Board. And I will read the, let's see.
Here. Got one?
I have
Roll
one.
call.
I'll do the roll call. I'm Victoria Ames. This is my first meeting as chair.
Good there.
Scott Self,
Here.
Mark Scalera,
Here.
Richard Lane,
Here.
Brandon Self,
Here.
Michael York.
Here.
Our selectmen's rep is not present. Stacy Goodale,
Here.
Charlie Harbeck,
Here.
Jane Johnson. Here. Also present is Adam Paquette, our town planner, and Susan Ells, our recording secretary. And there's no need to seat any alternates. So first order is a motion to approve the minutes of March 12th, 2026.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Discussion? Excuse me?
Scott seconded.
Yeah, I second it.
Okay.
Yeah, but he.
Discussion.
Discussion is what she said.
I didn't hear her
Any
say
changes?
that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Gotta speak up. Soft voice there,
I did note on the second page, it's third paragraph down, Scalera remarked on the revised permissible use application, and I think that's meant to be the wetlands conditional use application. Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Second item is there anything on the agenda that would require us to notify adjacent towns because of a regional impact?
I make a motion that there's nothing on our agenda. It is in the City of Keene, but the City of Keene has been notified.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so I should read the agenda first.
Sure.
All right. So our first and only public hearing is Planning Board 26005, which is Revision Energy, on behalf of the City of Keene, have submitted a site plan review application for 2 ground-mounted solar arrays on approximately 24 acres of undeveloped land at Dillant-Hopkins Airport. The project site spans both the rural agricultural and residence districts at tax map 205, lot 1. And the second item will be a discussion and other business. We'll be looking at a new tenant application for A&O Canine. Second is site plan review regulations discussion. And third is notification of a citizen planner roundtable. So I think before I was thinking that we might have a fair number of people here tonight, and I just wanted to quickly go through the process of what we're going to be doing in case some of you haven't been to a meeting recently, and that is that we're going to first look at the completeness of the application, and then we'll open the public hearing, and at that point, during that process, after we see the overview from the applicant, there'll be an opportunity for questions from the public. So, and also just to set expectations, it's my hope that the board will support continuing this public hearing until April 9th because the Conservation Commission hasn't yet had a chance to review this application, and we value their input. So our objective is to determine whether the site plan is consistent with the purpose and intent of applicable regulations. That's what we're here to do today. So before we get into it, Adam, would you mind giving us a staff overview?
I'm going to go to the middle table with the mic for that. We might just want to go around, so I'm going to keep it brief. Hopefully you all read the accompanying memo to this application. The only important part I want us to focus on right now is the site plan review regulations. So staff has concluded that the applicant, in our opinion, meets all the site plan review regulations. The applicant has provided a complete, they have addressed all of those regulations on pages 23 and 25 in the provided packet. There's no critical feedback from staff. A lot of the feedback that we had was addressed at the zoning board stage. One thing we want to mention is that there should be additional screening for subarray number 1. We identified somewhere on the plans that I think it was on the northern end of subarray number 1. It was left unscreened, and that should be screened. So that's really our only piece of feedback as to screening. Another point of discussion I want the board to bring up is once the City of Keene reaches 100% renewable energy, which this project is, it's going to support their goal to achieve 100% renewable energy for the municipal buildings. Once that goal is reached, could some sort of partnership be made with the town of Swanzey to benefit from these solar arrays somehow? So that is all of staff's feedback for this project. Any questions for me before the applicant? Awesome, thank you.
All right, so then let's open the public hearing and, oh no, I'm sorry, we need to look at completeness first. And we can go through the entire checklist, but I think maybe a quicker way might be to just, is there anything that the planning board or staff are aware of that is not complete?
We do have one waiver we'll have to vote on.
Yep. So hearing no elements of incompleteness, we can do that by consensus, right?
No, we need a motion.
All right,
That is
all right.
complete now.
So I'd accept a motion that the site plan is complete as presented.
I'll make a motion that the site plan is complete as presented and ready to go to public hearing.
I'll second.
And as far as discussion goes, the site plan indicates that there is a page 2.5 that's a grading and drainage plan dash conduit, and it's not included in the sets that we've received. So I don't think, I don't know if that's an issue for completeness, but we can address that later. Okay, okay. Excuse me? Okay. All right. So all in favor that the site plan is complete?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right. So in that case, I will open, oh no, waivers. We'll look at waivers.
Number 3.
The only request for a waiver is number 3, which is there, a north arrow written in graphic scale of 1 inch equals 30 feet. And the issue there is that the scale of the site plan is so large that different scales had to be used. Is that an issue with anyone?
I make a motion, we accept the waiver.
Second?
Aren't we looking for another waiver right there? About, isn't there a waiver that you're looking for about the 5%
Oh,
grade?
yes.
So we ought to do both of those at once.
All right, all right.
I'll hold off on my motion.
Second back. I seem to have lost that
And it's
page.
just about the gravel road
Right.
being in excess of 5%.
Yep.
So that's a waiver they're asking for, and personally, I don't see any reason for not granting it.
It's just a very short section of the access road to,
It is,
Yeah.
and they could probably change it, but it'd be more excavation there, so. I'll make I'll let him he started the motion, so.
I'll make a motion, we accept both waivers for the north arrow scaling and the gravel.
And I'll second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. All right, in that case, let's open the public hearing, and it's our convention to reread the notice, but since we have only this element, well, I'll do it, I'll read it. So it's a public hearing for Planning Board 26005, Revision Energy on behalf of the City of Keene have submitted a site plan review application for 2 ground-mounted solar arrays on approximately 24 acres of undeveloped land at Dillant-Hopkins Airport. The project site spans both the rural agricultural and residence districts at tax map 205, lot 1. Would you like to present the application?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Megan Yulin. I am with Revision Energy. We are the project developer on this project, and we're a local employee-owned solar company. We've been very fortunate to do a bunch of work in the Monadnock region, including for the town of Swanzey. I'm joined tonight in the audience here with several representatives from the City of Keene and our civil engineer, Verdantis, so they'll be on hand to help answer questions.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Sure. Apologies. Scoot in. All right. The project that we have proposed is a 5 megawatt fixed tilt ground mounted array. It means all of the there are no moving components on the project and no tracking mechanism. The racking system is a ground screw foundation, so it's approximately a 9-foot ground screw that's drilled into the earth with relatively little site disturbance. And the racking system is mounted to that, and the panels are affixed to the racking system at a 30-degree tilt. The maximum height of the system is just under 12 feet. That's the basic construction. There are equipment pads that hold the inverters and the transformers for the project, and all of the electrical within the project is buried, and between the 2 subarrays, the electrical is also buried. There's a small amount of above-ground infrastructure in the northern array that provides for the grid connection. As far as the project ownership, the City of Keene will be the owner. We have no third-party investor owner on this project. And this is a project that's been in development for several years. The airport parcel was identified by the Energy Committee in an effort to identify parcels of city-owned land that could support a solar array and support the city's goals of achieving 100% renewable energy use by 2030. And this parcel was selected because it has very limited use. There are many development restrictions due to the overlying airspace and height restrictions, as well as the topography of the site and access considerations for the airport. The city commissioned a land development study a few years ago, and it also concluded that these portions of the southern part of the airport were constrained for really any other use. They're not suitable for expanding hangars or retail development due to those restrictions, and the study concluded that a solar energy system was perhaps the only reasonable use of these areas. So that brings us here tonight. We did go before the zoning board several months ago and secured those variances for the rural agricultural and residence district. As far as the overall siting of the project, we worked with the McFarland Johnson, the city's experienced airport planner, and with multiple collaborations with FAA and DOT to ensure that we were siting the project to avoid all impacts to aircraft operations. So if you see on sheet C2.1, that does show the airspace overlay, and the project is horizontally outside of any object-free areas, runway safety areas, et cetera, and it is below any vertical approach surfaces. So we've taken great care, given the unique nature of the site, to site the project so that it will be compatible with the current airport use. Let's see. As far as permitting requirements, just a quick overview of what we're expecting for the project. In addition to this local site plan review, The project will be reviewed by FAA, both for the airspace and obstruction evaluation and for a change of use permit. The latter has been submitted, and we're expecting responses very soon. We will also secure a construction general permit through the EPA, and we will secure an alteration of terrain permit through New Hampshire DES. The alteration of terrain permits will be submitted shortly. Our hope was to have everything kind of submitted at once in conjunction with this application, but that did fall a couple weeks behind. So that is underway, and the project will comply with the requirements of the AOT permit. It also required a driveway permit from DOT and a change of use permit from DOT as well. And those permits are related to the two access points. So we have two subarrays, and they each have their own individual access point. On the northern array, we're using the existing driveway. There'll be some improvements and modifications to provide an access point into the solar array. And then in the south, we did secure the DOT permit to permit a new entrance. Our plans had shown both a proposed new entrance and an alternate entrance. Because we did receive that permit, we will not be pursuing the alternate entrance. And I can perhaps do like a little bit of a walkthrough with the plans here, if that's okay. Start with our southern array. So the plan is to come directly in from Old Homestead Highway. This is the new driveway permit that was secured. The project's fence line currently exists off property. This fence line that exists here will be demolished and will be attached to the existing airport fencing, and we'll modify that fence line around the project.
Excuse me,
Yes.
be on this side, so I see what you're referring to.
Yeah.
You guys can come around here if you want to get a better view.
This will be the permitted driveway access and turnaround. We have temporary gravel expansion for construction vehicles to access the site during the construction timeframe. So we did confirm that will support tractor trailers entering and turning around in the site and not impacting the flow of traffic on 2. The stormwater provisions provide for a drainage swale on the side of the project and along the upper side that convey stormwater to a detention pond. So that will treat and detain stormwater from the project. And then the equipment paths here are located next to the access road. And on the northern array, we enter from a little bit here to here, but that entrance is a little bit further north on Old Homestead Highway, and that's the existing driveway. We will modify a branch of that driveway that will provide access outside the fence line for the utility infrastructure required for specific access, and that will also provide access into the solar array and the turnaround there. And that is also adjacent to our equipment pads. And similar to the south array, as well as the swales outside of the project, conveys the stormwater from the project area to the extension basin. On the north array, we have also proposed screening. As I mentioned, we focused our efforts here on the the lower portion of the site where there are abutting residences. We propose a row of evergreens there that continues the existing evergreen screening here. And we're happy to discuss potential for screening on this end of the site as well. Our considerations there, just making sure that we can fit both the stormwater drainage and the screening in that area. We didn't focus on this area initially because there isn't anything directly across from it.
Can I ask a question while you got this chart up about,
Can we wait until the presentation is complete? What will happen is, after we complete the presentation, planning board members will ask questions. So
okay,
you have to
I'm
kind of
sorry.
hold them, sorry.
Okay. No worries. That should complete the kind of walkthrough of the site plan with regards to the technical standards and the design of development. Solar arrays are unique in that they can generally accommodate a lot of terrain. So we have reduced, we're not disturbing any grading outside of what's required for the road and the stormwater improvements. The solar panels will follow the existing grade of the land, and the areas underneath and around them will be revegetated and will allow for stormwater infiltration. The materials that are excavated from the ponds and the swales will be reused to the extent possible on site, and to the extent not possible, that will be removed from site. As far as off-street parking and loading requirements, the solar is passive use. Once it's constructed, there are relatively small number of visits that are required to maintain and service it. The existing driveways and turnarounds provide sufficient parking for maintenance and service vehicles. So we haven't included any additional parking provisions. This does meet the sizing for one parking slot. The grading is obviously shown on the plans and has been designed so that it will not result in flow onto Route 32 or abutting properties. Discuss the waiver. As far as access and traffic patterns, like I said, the solar array requires very little in terms of ongoing maintenance, so it will not increase the overall traffic to the site. It takes maybe 4 to 6 visits per year for preventative and reactive maintenance, and the city will be responsible for mowing the site during the course of the year from the airport, which they already maintain the site and mow it as part of airport operations anyways. As far as emergency response, the permanent driveways and turnarounds do provide access for emergency responders into the site. Typically, the practice is to provide a Knox padlock the fire department can use to access the site. And we always do a walkthrough with the local fire department once the project's complete and running to ensure they're aware with the shutdown provisions and where they can access those portions of the system. For illumination and lighting, we don't propose any lighting as part of this project. The FAA will review the new pole infrastructure and determine whether or not obstruction lighting is required there. That's the only area where we expect obstruction lighting to be required. And the landscaping plans involves installing new evergreen trees. With solar, realistically, the only way to really screen them is by an evergreen green tree to provide the type of buffer that's typically looked for in terms of screening that from a residential use. With the airport specifically, there's also the added consideration of vegetation management and making sure that the airport's able to continue to do that safely and meet their obligations to maintain the airport as a safe and operable space. So we did try to type the project to make use of the existing buffers to the extent possible as well. And we don't have any water supply or sewage disposal systems, no underground fuel tanks. In terms of stormwater drainage, we will secure that permit from New Hampshire DES for alteration of terrain. And in terms of pollution control, solar array is a passive system and it doesn't produce any emissions or discharges, fumes, etc. The equipment operates only during daylight hours. The only components that generate noise are the transformers or equipment pads, and those are typically located interior to the site and typically not audible outside of the bounds of the site. Inverters are a max of 65 decibels during the daylight hours. Of course, they don't operate during the nighttime hours, and that's at 1 meter from the equipment. So the further you get from that equipment, the less of a concern that is, and particularly in this area, they are offset over 100 feet from the abutting roadway. The construction is expected to occur starting this summer, August the 26th, and will wrap up in late 27. Of course, there's a subsection of time in there that is more concentrated with work on site, and then it tapers off for utility coordination and commissioning. So the more active construction period is closer to 6 months. And that will occur during normal weekday hours. There's no provisions for handicapped persons or architectural plans. This is not a building and it's not accessible for public access. And then the new utilities and transmission lines will be buried. So that area, and that a sheet you mentioned, I apologize that it was missing. It just zoomed in on this area here where we have underground conduit going up the existing fence line. But it does bump up out around the wetlands, and we will be coordinating with FAA in the area where we need to cross. As far as the environmental considerations, we've coordinated extensively with NHFG. I know, and you mentioned the Conservation Commission still needs to comment on this. They did provide comments for the zoning board meeting, and I believe we addressed those comments with regards to the grassland birds that are on the site. We have several provisions that were provided in the set from New Hampshire Fish and Game that we will comply with to ensure that there are not impacts to the grassland bird species as a result of the project construction. There will be a no work period May 1st through August 1st during their nesting season, so we won't be on site when they are nesting. And there are additional provisions. We've been actively doing surveys, and that was a key factor in citing the project as well, to make sure that we were minimizing impacts. And the changes that occurred between the zoning board and this plan, have further reduced our footprint in terms of new access road and areas of impact. So we're quite confident that plan going forward will meet those considerations from Fish and Game, and has been thoroughly discussed with them. I believe that is the bulk of my presentation. General solar energy systems, they're quiet, that they're passive use, and that coexists very well with their surroundings. So I'll pull up a positive project for the town of Swanzey and City of Keene here. And happy to answer questions, and like I said, we have representatives from the City of Keene and our civil engineer here. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning board questions.
Not yet.
I hate to make you wait, but we have to do the internal things first.
On the drainage part of it, now, I know you said that the solar panels were following the natural contour of the land, is that correct? On both sets, right? The number 1 and number 2 sets there?
Yes.
And yet you're putting in detention ponds, the natural contour goes that way anyway. I'm just wondering why you have to get an alteration of terrain permit unless you're disturbing over 100,000 square feet, and why you're putting the detention ponds in there.
Yes, the alteration of terrain permit is required because DES considers the disturbance of the project to be the outline of the entire project, including the space between the panels.
Regardless of whether you're
Regardless.
disturbing the actual ground?
Right, regardless. And the detention pond is required because we are required to detain stormwater from the project area before it flows off-site, so.
But that's the same site, right? The airport is, the whole airport is the same site. I'm just curious.
Right.
You're putting it in, that's fine. I'm just curious as to why they made you do it.
Right, maybe I'll call our civil engineer to help go into the stormwater detail if I could.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, of course, yeah. Hi, my name's Ryan Hudock. I'm with Verdantis. And that's a great question. And to echo Megan, essentially it's a state requirement. It's specifically for solar projects. They consider the area of disturbance, everything within the fence line, which is a little unrealistic in terms compared to other projects, but specifically for solar, they consider everything within the fence line is disturbed area, and that's what requires the state DS AOT permit. So as a result, the AOT permit is essentially a highly detailed stormwater design plan. So the everything shown on the submitted package is done for that AOT, and yeah.
Okay, a little bit different.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
are they considering then more runoff from the panels themselves as it goes onto the ground rather than absorption? Or you don't know?
There's a lot of assumptions that are made. I think assumptions for solar projects like this are extremely conservative because the panels are, they largely follow the existing grade, and they also have impervious area underneath them because they're, on posts, so it's not like the surface area of the panel, it would be considered impervious, but just the letter of the law with the state, there's a lot of impervious that they consider that we account for with the stormwater design. So I guess in large part, the stormwater is very robust. I think I think the assumptions are extremely conservative, so, yeah.
A little overkill maybe
A
there.
little overkill, yeah.
So the underground conduit connecting the two solar arrays together, is that going to run down the road? I didn't happen to see it on the plans. I might have missed it. I'm just wondering where, I know you're going to connect them.
It's on this missing sheet.
Oh, is it? Okay. I'm just wondering where the underground is going to go between the two different arrays. Because you've got the poles down here where it's going on to the public service, correct?
It's just inside the fence.
It follows, it comes from the equipment pads in the south, and
Yeah.
it follows this dashed line.
Down that road,
down
okay.
The side of the road, but still on the city property, so it doesn't impact the roadway or existing electrical infrastructure. It's along the very inside of the fence for most of it, and there's just a couple areas where it has to dip out to
And all the inverters are going to be right there with that second set then, correct, by the poles?
the inverters, yeah, the inverters are going to be located here and here.
Oh, so it is AC down in there, it's AC both ways.
Each array has its own set of inverters and switch gear. And
Okay.
it combines here and then runs where it is in utility infrastructure.
I'm sorry, but where? I can't see it. Where are your inverters are located where?
They are located at both of the equipment pad locations that are held out on the site plan, so here and here.
Okay. The northern converter, how close is that to the existing ILS control shack?
This would be the existing control shack, so that is,
That kind of leads me into another question concerning that. And I'm totally ignorant on this. The panels themselves, as they're generating electricity, is there a field of interference that's around that panel? Do you understand? Maybe I'm not explaining it or asking.
you're asking if there'll be interference that affects the FAA operations essentially?
The ILS system, because that's the main access, for that's the only access, as far as I know, for ILS coming into that airport.
Right. The FAA reviews location of the panels relative to their equipment and any impacts as part of the 7460 evaluations that we submitted. So they will determine whether or not there are any feasibility.
Okay, so that has not been answered yet.
Correct. It will be answered soon as it is submitted.
Okay.
And
I
so,
would put that in as a condition.
Could you restate that?
Just that these panels do not interfere with the ILS approach system.
iOS?
ILS, instrument aiming system.
could I suggest perhaps that the condition be that we submit the FAA determination letters and approvals rather than that specific wording?
Wouldn't that be covered under the FAA, what is it, the FAA airspace and obstruction?
Right, right,
What he's talking about?
right, yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
So that it's
just
covered
to
under
avoid
the
confusion.
permits they have to get.
Hi there, Ryan Cooley, Airport Director for the Keene Dillant-Hopkins Airport. To address your concerns about the ILS critical area and the ILS system in general, and if there's going to be any feedback, if you will, or signal degradation from these solar panels, we have two items that are being addressed. One, Megan's already talked about the 7460, which the FAA will make a final determination on everything and how it affects the airport infrastructure. But it is my understanding that our airport planners, McFarland Johnson, have already taken all of that into consideration, and that is why this location in particular was selected, was because of its location that would not impact safety areas, signals, etc. So I hope that gives you a little bit of confidence that we have a multi-layered approach looking at this from two different checkpoints.
Do we need certification on that?
We'll get it. when we
With
get-
that?
Yeah,
AA approval will have it.
the FAA will submit a letter of determination based on the 7460.
Thank you.
Charlie, do you have any questions? Stacy?
I have, on your plan, I don't see where the access road for maintenance is located up around the northern panel, group of panels. Like, I noticed your
You mean the
southern
existing one?
Pardon?
The existing one?
No, there is no well, there's an existing road that goes down, that runs basically along the approach lights,
Mm-hmm.
the strobe lights.
There's
But
a gate, there's a gate. She'll
Yes,
show
I
you
know
where it is, but
there's
there is
a
a
gate
gate
there,
and they're extending the
but-
road north.
Is there any indication on the plat where the road for maintenance is located?
You mean a new one? Is that what you mean?
Yes, a new one.
The new maintenance road is this stretch here. It's not necessary to have a formal gravel road throughout the array. There is spacing that allows for vehicle traffic between the array rows and fence if needed, but for the most part, maintenance occurs at the equipment pad area. The only maintenance that's really occurring out here is to replace a panel or replace some level of damage.
Just thinking back to the solar array that we were talking about a couple of years ago here in West Swansea, that we required gating and a road into the panels for fire department access if needed, et cetera? Do we
Isn't
need
that
anything
shown on
of that
another,
nature?
on another
Yeah.
page? Maybe we're looking at maybe we need more detail on a different page.
So
Do you
there
recall?
is a gate here that allows access into the fenced area for the solar panels.
And one more thing about the access road, that's for the southernmost panels here. I see, you've got a new driveway permit in from Route 32, correct? Have an existing one and then a new one. So what's going to happen to the existing one if you get the new one?
So, let me just grab the overlay. This is an existing access point, but this is not an existing road. This is a proposed alternate road. We're not going to build this. Right now, the existing driveway comes off and bends this way down into the lower portion.
I see, that's only if you don't get the new driveway permit, right?
And since we submitted this, we did receive the new driveway permit.
Okay, so that will not be there.
Actually,
Yeah, so
will
that
not
other
be
one
there.
will not be there, okay.
So the set of plans that will not show that, correct? You'll eliminate that?
Correct, yeah, we'll eliminate that prior to construction.
Michael, do you have questions at this point?
All set at this point.
Go ahead,
I'm
Richard.
sorry, I haven't finished. The last question really is looking at the plan here. It shows, I believe, three phases
Oh, yes.
of construction.
Mhm.
So we're talking about three different arrays, correct?
There are three separate,
Technically, with three different arrays.
right. There are
Okay,
three
and
areas that.
Your application says for two ground-mounted. Just a minor technical detail.
When you're generating power and you're sending it to the grid for Keene, how much of Keene buildings is that going to cover? And is there going to be any excess that you sell back to the,
The way the project is configured is that it exports all of the electricity directly to the grid. So it will cover 100% of Keene's energy usage, and they will look to bring on a couple additional
what I'm
partners.
getting at is, it's as close to being a commercial project as can be, because you're generating or manufacturing something and you're selling it to the grid, which then covers Keene.
That is the logistics of it, yes. I mean, we would consider it a commercial project.
What
with
I'm getting at
municipal
is, under the agreement with the state laws, if it's a commercial product, then the town of Swansea can put property taxes on that particular piece of property.
As I understand it currently, is that the property is tax exempt, and because do you want to speak to this?
But not for commercial.
Well, it's still going to be a municipal use, so it won't change the designation of the property, because the ownership is the city of Keene.
It's unclear, but
Okay.
Adam,
I have clarification from our tax assessor.
Thank you.
That is correct. So, what Megan just stated is correct.
yeah, but to me, it's unfair.
That may be, but our tax assessor has confirmed.
can we restate what the situation is? So there's the land and then this construction on the land. How will the land will continue to be exempt
Yes.
for property tax purposes? And the infrastructure will be exempt because, or it will be exempt?
It's a municipal use.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But once you produce more than what Keene uses.
The requirements for a project of this scale is that the electricity can only serve municipal or governmental uses. It's not able to be sold to any commercial entity or anything like that.
Right, and the 5 megawatts is the maximum?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it qualifies for solar exemption tax.
Yeah, it's
Kind of contradicts our...
72:23.
what we have published, I think, but
So it does qualify for the exemption?
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Is it because it's a political subsidy or what?
yeah. I'm still not clear on that personally, because the 7261 states that systems may be connected to the grid in a net metered or group net metered arrangement, or in a direct sale arrangement. But that's not really our purpose here today. It's just a question.
There would not be a reason to deny.
Correct. It would not be a reason to deny.
No, it would not be a reason, but
Yeah, but it is a curiosity.
it is
right?
something that we also can.
Do you have more right now?
I'm all set for now.
Okay.
That's what I-
Scott, are you set for now?
Yep, I am.
Mark?
Well, I attended the zoning board meeting. I had a lot of questions answered then, so I'm pretty satisfied. I just want to bring up, I guess, one thing, and I don't remember the correct term for it, but maybe it's a blue light effect, or it's at night when birds are flying, fowl are flying. Is this going to look like a pond to them?
There are studies that substantiate that that's an effect that it occurs broadly across systems. All that I am familiar with is that there were certain specific circumstances that were observed in very specific conditions in the desert Southwest. So it's very different than the project that we have proposed here.
You know, part of my concern is, you know, we have a current situation, it's not always recognized, between Wilson Pond and then the body of water, the wetlands on the other side of the airport. And, you know, the birds flying back and forth, you know, can cause an aviation hazard of some sort. And I just want to make sure that this isn't adding to that. You know, we're very critical of people, feeding the wildlife on the side of the road of Wilson Pond. We work hard to prevent that, and I guess that we just don't want to complicate things any more than we have already.
Yes.
And I'm sure the new airport director would appreciate that. Welcome to the airport, by the way.
No,
That's all I have. But
Yeah, I'm not aware of any studies that support that would be an outcome for this project. I think it's a little bit of an internet story that went viral and got, manipulated. We have some comments.
Hello again. Thank you for the welcome. One item that I want to stress is aviation safety, airport safety is my top priority. And I can safely assure you that both the FAA and the airport and the City of Keene would not be proposing something that would be detrimental to the traveling public, the GA aviation group that flies in and out, and the business jets. More and more of airport land use of being installed solar arrays across the country at airports is becoming more and more common because there is a lot of limitation to what can be done on land to help airport revenues. In terms of development and construction, you're very limited to what you can build when you're close to runways and taxiways. So again, kind of going back to that 7460, the FAA will be doing a full review of the project, but rest assured that I definitely brought up the questions about wildlife attractants with in the case of the what are those called, the grasshopper sparrow, and then as well as the diversion ponds. I had questioned, are those going to be? To me, those would seem like they might be a wildlife attractant, but our aviation consultants and the FAA were like, no, it's going to be okay because those ponds will drain within a specific amount of time. So birds and aircraft don't mix, and this will be okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Jane?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I've seen solar arrays, and I don't think they're attractive at all, and there's nothing you can do about that. but I want to know if there's been any study as to what it does to property values around the area of the solar array. Do people want to say, oh, I live a quarter of a mile from a big, beautiful solar array, for instance? That's one of my questions. And but I've driven by them. I haven't walked in them, but I've driven by a lot of them, and I don't find them at all attractive. I would not want to live across the street from one, or where I had to go past it every day.
Understood. Personal opinions vary, of course. There have been some studies. We did submit information around this for the zoning board. It was a criteria that needed to be agreed upon in order to advance those variances. There have been a number of studies, and I don't have them in front of me, but locally, there was a study around New Hampshire Electric Co-op's 2-megawatt array in Moulton Borough, and they did a study of property values around that array and found no impacts. There was also a very large project, about 10 times the size of this one, that was proposed, I believe Fitzwilliam, that went before the Site Evaluation Committee at New Hampshire, and for that they did a very in-depth property value evaluation, which included that NHEC study, I believe, and that, though that project didn't get built, it did pass the permit requirement, and they did determine it would not have impacts on property values.
That it would or would not?
It would not.
Would not.
There's been studies down south that are frequently referenced for similar scale arrays where new housing developments have been installed surrounding those properties, and similarly found that it's not meaningful impact.
I can see how they might be more easily tolerated if they were benefiting my electric bill or your electric bill, but what will be the value of these to Swanzey beyond eliminating the emissions from planes and so on? All this, yes, that's the big picture. But to people who live in Swanzey, what are the benefits of these?
Well, there are benefits to local power generation, particularly during peak seasons in the summer when you have high demand for air conditioning, et cetera. Solar provides power to the grid during those times, so it supports the grid. It avoids, it helps avoid, I should say, use of peaker plants, that typically coal-fired, that provide extra power onto the grid during those times of peak demand that's more costly. So having solar in the area does help provide local generation, avoid transmission from faraway places, because the way it works, the power flows onto the grid, it's going to the homes that are nearby, while the monetary credit is going to the system owner. It is providing power to the local community and avoiding some of the long-term transmission costs.
Just looking at the drawings doesn't really give you a true picture of what this is going to look like in our neighborhood. Like a lot of things we look at in planning board, when we see the site plan, it's on paper, and we say, oh, yeah, and then once it's there, we hear people complaining, but where are they? They should be here now, grant you, but that's just another thing I thought about. And I wondered if there are any figures to illustrate the benefits, figures or examples of the benefits gained from the other solar array that Keene has down on the airport road at the airport. This is much larger.
Yes, there are figures. I don't have them. They're not particularly applicable to this project because it's a different setup. And
would they be available in Keene?
They are available, but they don't inform, I guess, the site criteria. So I'm not sure the extent. I guess it's Keene's decision whether or not they want to provide those for a public record.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon has nothing.
I got something I forgot about. So the glare analysis was pretty good, but what about road glare? Did they look at that?
For roadways, excuse me, it's typically not a concern due to the angle of the panels. The panels do
Because
have
of
an
the 30
anti-reflective coating. Correct, yeah. So the glare typically doesn't
The
reflect
incident
onto
light
the
doesn't
roadway.
change as the sun's going over them?
Right. I mean, in the case of this project for the southern array, it's set back quite a bit from the roadway. There's not going to be much visibility for the passing traffic. And in the case of the north, we've proposed the evergreen screening, so I don't expect that roadway glare would be a concern. And in general, the panels are designed to absorb light and have fairly minimal reflection.
So I just want to ask James questions a slightly different way. Are you aware of any studies where it did impact property taxes? Because there's always studies to support, one way. I'm just
Right,
asking if there's
right.
any.
Well, there's studies that are available out there, for sure. They typically found that impacts were more likely in dense residential neighborhoods and less likely in more rural scenarios.
Okay, I have some questions. And I'd just like to preface it that I think that the concept is outstanding, and I applaud Keene for the interest in meeting electrical needs through solar. But what it means for Swansea is the equivalent of about 18 football fields of solar array. So we need to get our heads around that. And I'd like to return to that in a minute, but one of the things I'm wondering about is these panels do have a lifespan, and the technology is advancing rapidly, and I understand these are bifacial panels, which is cool, but we're going to be into the next iteration of panels probably pretty soon. So, and it's speculated that some of those, I don't know how far we have to go, but eventually we're going to have panels that will actually affix to structures, right? So I need to know how the city feels about decommissioning these arrays, and I think the planning board should consider requesting a bond for decommissioning. So it's kind of a statement.
Mhm.
Maybe you want to speak to that, but that is something that I'm going to encourage the board to consider.
Sure. The lifespan of the panels, the commercial lifespan, we say is 25 years. That's how long the production guarantee is warranted for. However, they typically last much longer, upwards of 40 years. At the end of the system life, throughout the project operation, the city will have the opportunity to either choose to replace the components and continue the operation of the system or decommission it. As the project owner, the decommissioning would be their responsibility. Most of the project components are recyclable. It's largely steel and other metals and glass from the panels. So when systems are decommissioned, they are, all of the above ground infrastructure is fully removed. It's typically brought to appropriate recycling facilities. There's a value associated with that recyclable material. And as far as decommissioning bonds are concerned, we're certainly familiar with that on projects. I would say that in this case, where the city is the owner and the long-term owner-operator of the airport, they have the responsibility to maintain that property for safe aircraft operations, including maintaining this solar array. I think the risk to the town of Swansea is very small, but there would be a decommissioning issue because they are obviously present on the site and maintaining the site, unlike some third-party ownership scenarios.
So the conduit and underground things would remain. Would the ground screws be?
The ground screws are removed. Typically, conduits are removed to a depth of 2 feet. Anything, I believe that's what we typically specify, but it's all technically removable from the site.
Well, as I say, I think given that it is of significant size, I think that's something the board should bear in mind before we sign off. As a board, we need to talk about, or maybe you can help us with the idea of how your phasing of your construction, because we need to consider active and substantial development. So, what are you asking for exactly? Are you asking that we approve all 3 arrays at this time?
Yes, we are asking
Even though
for,
they're going to be constructed over time, right?
the phasing of construction typically occurs as the erosion control and stormwater measures, the civil work to support the site entrances, the foundations will come in and be installed for the arrays, and then the arrays will be installed in a phased approach. So we install the racking, then the modules, and then the final site stabilization.
So you're saying that you would you would do all the groundwork for all 3 sections, and then you would go and do all the racking for all 3 sections, and then still, over time, what should we imagine?
Right. I guess there's some flexibility for the construction project manager and how they approach the site while making sure that they comply with the alteration of terrain permit rules to not have an open amount of site disturbance greater than that threshold at once. But typically, yes, it's installed, and the ground screws get installed first. Then they may opt to install all of the racking first, or they may opt to install the arrays individually.
Like we don't really know the answer to that question yet. Okay?
Yeah.
When will we know the answer to that question?
That's absolutely information that we can provide. And in terms of, I apologize, I think I maybe missed the tail end of what this leads into, so I can, you were mentioning active and substantial development, yes.
To know when you've officially started the project and what,
Yep.
how we should, it's more of an internal
I see.
issue.
Yep. So the official start of the project will be with the civil work. The array construction will occur, the site stabilization will occur, and then there's, electrical testing, commissioning, and wiring that occurs at the equipment pads. That may trail, but the active work period is generally about 6 months.
For all 3 areas.
Yeah, so what I think I know what you're asking. When a building's being built, we can say substantial progress is the foundation, right? This is a little bit different because of what it is. So I guess we're trying to, is that what
That's my question, and
Okay.
your application is coming in at a funny time because we're in the process of updating our regulations
Okay.
relative to that exact question.
Okay.
So I just don't want to miss, attending to
Understood.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bottom line is that you have 1 year to have active and substantial development on the property. Otherwise, the site plan approval expires. That's what we're getting at.
Okay.
So, and there are certain criteria you need to meet for active and substantial development, and that's what the chairperson was trying to ascertain
Okay.
from you.
Well, given our current schedule of August start, there absolutely would be active and substantial development, the civil work, and the racking foundations, and starting racking assembly would start in 2026.
Detention ponds, probably.
Yep.
They probably
yep.
go in before the solar panels, correct?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now this is kind of a big one, but again, I think it gets to Jane's point and to the 18 football fields, plus or minus. I would like to see a separate page that shows the landscaping plan. And I would like that landscaping plan to show landscaping and screening. Okay? What's proposed so far are some white spruce trees that will help to screen a certain area of the roadway. I'm not sure if you know that those trees will grow to be 40 to 60 feet tall. I don't know if that matters, but heads up. If you are going to use white spruce, I would like to see, rather than in a little line of soldiers, I would like to see those plantings staggered. And I would like the the Conservation Commission, of which Mark is a member, to work with you guys to consider using the drainage swales around the arrays as a place to plant low hedgerow species. And this is something that apparently is the cutting edge for solar arrays, and what it would allow us to do is actually get some benefit in Swansea in terms of creating more environment for pollinators and increase the diversity of that area. So don't say no yet. So what I'm hoping that you'll do is talk with the planning commission, with the Conservation Commission, because they do have appropriate species. They are trained in this kind of work, and I think it's something that the city could be really proud of, because it is cutting edge work. Okay, and I have actually more details on what I would like to see on a landscaping sheet. Okay,
Okay.
but this is a major change to what we're used to in our neighborhood, and it would, not only would it be more attractive, and that would make us happier, but it also could actually help the environment, which I know solar is all about doing. So that's a big one, and it's really, really important to me. So breaking up that element to screening and landscaping. So I'm asking to landscape around the arrays.
Okay. On that note, I absolutely appreciate those comments, and of course, wonderful benefits to having pollinators on site. We can absolutely provide more detail on the landscaping plan. We can accomplish the staggering. There is limited space, but I believe we can stagger those trees there. Just with regards to the swales, I believe that they do need to be maintained to allow for drainage flow through them, and the concern there is that, the airport maintains this entire property at a very low cut grass area to prevent wildlife, and pollinators are one thing, but as soon as you have, additional species that are attracting more birds and mice and rodents and places for them to hide, and that in turn brings raptors. Right, well, that in turn brings, raptors that are a concern for the airport and the aviation standards. So I certainly recognize there's a visual impact, and we certainly are fully willing to work with the board so that we can adequately mitigate that. But for the site particularly, the intent to bring in species that support habitat is counter the airport's mandate to maintain that as a safe space that does not create habitat spaces that brings in potentially hazardous wildlife. So that is one of the considerations that we had to take into consideration when we were presenting what we thought would provide screening for the project. So we did not provide other landscaping elements in addition to the screening, because that area is maintained as a mode area.
Would you be willing to research this? Because from what I read, this is not an unusual approach, and perhaps it just hasn't made it here to Swansea yet.
No, I know it's not an unusual approach. I believe it's a little bit unusual for the airport. I don't know, Ryan, if you have additional comments, but we can definitely research, but we have discussed that pretty thoroughly with the former airport director. So I just want to make you aware of that as well.
Thank you.
See if I can.
Yeah, so when it comes to landscaping on an airfield, the FAA is pretty strict on this. FAA Advisory Circular 150, 5200-33, Wildlife Hazard Management Principles, specifically states that, any landscaping, if we call it landscaping on airports, can't attract birds, create or assist in the creation of standing water, and provide a habitat. So we would need to make sure that whatever is put in there, whatever type of vegetation, whatever type of environment we're creating, is not an attractant to birds, doesn't provide habitat for wild animals, and doesn't contribute to standing water.
Just if you pursue the logic of that, grass is a habitat for animals,
That's correct.
So
So we have to maintain the grass at a specific height to kind of meet the standards of not creating an environment that would be acceptable to roost in, but make sure that we're not creating an environment that all of a sudden looks like a smorgasbord to animals that can come in and want to, eat the insects. So we have to keep a height limit on the grass that we're maintaining, just to put that into perspective. There's a lot of nuances in maintaining the vegetation on the airfield. If the FAA had their way, they'd probably like it to all be concrete, yeah.
What is that height?
It depends on where you're at, depending on the safety areas, but we want to keep it to about 6 inches to make sure that we're not, creating tall grass that deer want to hide in and creating short grass that geese want to go and hang around in.
All right, and I guess my last question, I think I recall from seeing the details of the fence, and that's that it actually is to be buried. Is that the intention?
The fence?
The security fence around the entire thing.
Security fence will not be buried. It will be a 8-foot chain link to meet airport perimeter fencing in the areas where it intersects with the perimeter. Inside the array, it's a agricultural fence, so it's a wire mesh that has, like 4x4 openings or gradiated openings, and that will not be buried.
But that could be installed so it's not flush with the ground. It probably would be your preference to have adequate space off the ground that would allow, say, the wood turtles to move through.
Yep.
To be able to mow underneath that fence.
Yes, it can.
Or string trim.
It can be elevated, yeah. Typically, it can provide like a 6-inch space, or it can be installed with the wider openings on the bottom so that small wildlife can pass through.
And I guess really my final question is, it's not clear to me that you're going to be installing 5 new poles that will collect the collector poles, I guess you call them. Do they look like normal poles that?
Yes.
But there'll be a cluster of them apparently.
They're about 40-foot spacing between them. They're standard utility poles at the same height as the other utility poles on the grid. They will have, there's different equipment per pole. There's a disconnect switch. There's a recloser, which is like a set of cams, like you would see for a transformer. There's the primary metering pole, and then there's recloser for the utility.
So each pole has a different function, I think.
Yeah, each pole has a different function, but yes, they basically look like standard utility poles, and there's a little bit of variation in the equipment that they hold on top.
And also just back to the inverter, that is running constantly?
They run during daylight hours. The decibel figures is kind of a max, as if they were running at max energy production. That's not a constant figure, it's just a maximum.
Okay.
What did you say that max was?
The inverters are rated for less than 65 decibels at 1 meter. So there's 1 meter from the inverters. There's about 100 plus feet between the inverters and the road itself. And I mean, we have them installed in our warehouse, for example, and people work around them. You don't notice it unless you're like
Sure.
right there.
That's the level of a good dishwasher.
Yep.
Is snow plowing an issue? And is that provided for within the regs?
The access roads will be able to be plowed. The arrays, typically we don't do snow plowing within the array itself. There's no snow clearing typically.
Just out of curiosity, whose responsibility is going to be the maintenance of this project once you've completed setting it up?
The project owner is ultimately responsible for the maintenance. They typically do that through a qualified service provider. We provide the service for a lot of the systems we install under O&M contracts.
Okay, and once you have to replace the panel, how is that going to be disposed of, or whose responsibility is it to recycle it or dispose of it?
Right, the ultimate ownership, of course, is with the property owner, but again, they work with a qualified
Okay, so you're-
firm to,
You're saying the property owner being the City of Keene, then?
yeah, yeah, and there are facilities that recycle solar panels. We work with one currently in Goffstown that deals with e-waste and recycles them appropriately.
And is it going to be the airport's responsibility to maintain the grass level that the airport manager has mentioned?
Yes.
I'm finished.
Any other questions from the board at this moment? Please, thank you for your patience.
Charlie, would you like to-
Oh, Charlie, sorry.
With all this metal laying around, it's grounded, is any concern for lightning strikes? And what would happen if lightning was to hit this stuff?
Yeah, that's not typically a concern. The equipment is grounded, it, meets all of electrical code and for lightning strikes particularly, I'm not familiar with that situation, so I guess I can't speak to it directly, but it is installed to code, and if there's a fault in the system generally, that the
System
system's
shut
programmed
down.
to shut down,
Yeah, of course, you first, but I've got an issue I want to be able to discuss, it's more than a question. The question. I got a lot of questions.
Would you mind stating your name again? Your name again?
All right, so let me get this straight. This is the board for the town of Swanzey.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Can I turn this? So if this is the board for the town of Swanzey, and all of these residences are affected by this big gigantic mess, that's not, that's not benefiting Swansea from what it sounds really in the least. Why did this ever approve of this big 8-football field monstrosity? Because when I first moved here, and I would drive down River Lane, which is somewhere around here, I'm not sure where this stops, they said somewhere around the Tarpon Flats. I used to drive down and it's a beautiful mountain, and I keep telling people tell me how New Hampshire loves the. Well, then they put up that FW Web, which is an eyesore too, but that's all the way down there. And then over here, they put down, excuse me for my frankness too, but I'm not the greatest speaker, but this is crazy, this is nuts, if you ask me. Then they put in the big apartment buildings, the great buildings, the condos that they can't sell. Then they put in the firehouse, which is a big monstrosity too. So now my view of the beautiful mountain is getting to now I gotta look at this. Because once I drive down my driveway, which is here, somewhere around here, depending on where this is gonna stop, they said the Tarpon Flats, so I'm figuring that's right around here. So I'm like right here. I gotta look at this now, instead of seeing the pretty, and the airport guy is saying they're really not gonna put a lot of plans because of the air, so we're gonna be looking at this all the time. That's absolutely gonna affect my property. I got 41 acres across, and it's beautiful up there, that's why I bought it. But as they do this sort of thing, they're making this look like the Bronx. That's why I left.
Yeah.
I don't wanna look at this, and I don't know what kind of generation of cancerous who knows what, because I'm living pretty close to this, which is a possibility down there. So my daughter comes up with cancer, and I'm gonna try to prove that this is why it happened. You don't know. As Charlie said, you get a lightning strike. This is a lot of metal. Also, all along here, because I live here, I know, this turns into a swamp. So we have a lot of water runoff that comes off. Right at the bus stop here, there's a pipe that goes under the street that goes into where they're proposing to do this. And that gets flooded out all the time, and they constantly have to clean it out, because once it gets filled with junk, it comes up onto Route 32, and that turns into an ice skating rink. Right here is where the bus stop is for the kids, right? They have I don't know why they do it, because you can pass cars right at the bus stop. And I tried to talk to the state about getting these lines put somewhere else down further or something, because right at the bus stop, that's where they decided to go around the bus. And I'm out in the middle of the street, stopping cars as the kids, not my kids, then other kids in the area that go on the bus, gotta get on the bus. And I'm always out there, because these kids that are going to the high school that drive by, they go by the bus all the time. And the bus driver beeping the horn, to a point where the bus driver has to give the kids a thumbs up before the kids will get on the bus, because the stop sign that comes out, nobody cares. So this, and what really bothers me more than anything is that what we've heard about is the array. Like a bunch of people, sorry, they're gonna make a lot of money off this, that live nowhere near here. These are the people that are gonna get affected by the array, and I'm one of them. And this is not gonna benefit us whatsoever in the town of Swanzey, so why are you guys having to okay this? This should be put in Keene if it's gonna benefit Keene, not in Swanzey, because it's in Swanzey. You know, it may be owned by the city of Keene, but this is Swanzey. And all of these people here are absolutely gonna get affected by that, 100%, and have to look at that mess on top of FWF and the fire station and the apartment building, and now next to the diner, they're talking about wrecking that house and building another ghetto. Because let's face it, low-income housing, where I came from, after about 10 years, guess what it turns into? Drugs and everything else happens. So I think this is craziness. And I would strongly hope that you guys would say, put it somewhere else. Especially because this is going to get all flooded out. And she was talking about the drainage, and somebody said something about, well, no, that's going to you're going to need that drainage because that gets flooded really bad for you.
So I hear 6 things that the effect of cumulative development in terms of what you see, health concerns, wetlands concerns, safety for the bus stop, that it may affect your property values, and what's the benefit to Swanzey. And I think some of these things I hope Megan can address.
And also, sorry,
yeah.
As it is because of FWF and it's the fire station, we're getting traffic like crazy now, even worse with the bus stop. And that Old Hempstead Highway isn't very wide. You got people walking on the sides. There's no sidewalk there either. Like my crazy mother-in-law walks to church and she get run over by a cop. There's no place to walk. But can you tell me what address? Because again, nobody is talking about this side. They're only talking about this side.
Here.
What's the last address?
I don't know your first name. I'm
Steve?
sorry. Steve.
Look at this.
Come here for a second. So here's your property, right? And here's your road out, okay? Yeah, you're there, okay, right? And here's your road out. Maybe show that to Megan so she knows what you're talking about, okay?
Here's where you're singing Peter Bird. There's my road right there.
Okay.
So, I think it's in 19 see, but the mountain over here is beautiful.
Let's try to, we need to condense this, okay? So I think the main,
Just a little angry.
no, I get it. I think the main things, you can address the health issues and how the dealing with the drainage, the wetlands issues, or not wetlands, but the drainage along the road. Increased traffic, no sidewalk, that's not really your purview. In terms of benefit to Swanzey, what we need to do as a board is to determine that the site plan is consistent with the purpose and intent of applicable regulations. So that's really like the domain of what we can do. We have to make sure that the site plan is consistent with what the rules are. There are many times when we wish, I'm sure, I know I do, wish we could say no. But instead we have to make sure that this is consistent with the rules and regulations of town. So let's turn it to Megan for a second. Talk about health concerns and that drainage off the, how you will be dealing with drainage there.
Sure. As far as health concerns, solar projects are, obviously installed on residences across. Well, we install them on residences, and there are no known health concerns from being in proximity to the solar array. Obviously, the solar array is much larger. I don't have it on hand, but I believe it's the Massachusetts Department of Energy did release a report that addresses this. So when people talk about health concerns, largely, I believe they're referring to like electromagnetic frequencies or EMF. And with that regard, the only components that generates that are the inverters and the switchgear, and there have been studies that found that that field really only extends 150 feet from the equipment. There are not any residences within that boundary. So we don't believe there are any health concerns from the project. You know, communities coexist around solar arrays in many areas. They have generally been found safe. You know, solar panels have been installed for 30 plus years, and there are no incidences that have been documented of solar panels or solar farms causing a health impact to surrounding communities.
You have another question.
We're not talking about 10 solar panels on the top of the house, we're talking about how many football fields worth of solar panels. That's a whole other game, that's not just a couple of solar panels, this is enormous.
So, but you're saying that the inverter is actually the element of the array that could potentially be a concern, and any issues decreased with distance? And
Correct.
150 feet, there's no...
Correct, they decrease with distance, and there was a study was performed, and the EMFs that are created by the inverters are basically equivalent to a microwave, even though the equipment is bigger. The impact in terms of that is, you know, equivalent to household appliance.
And dealing with the drainage on that side, could you just reiterate how you intend to address runoff there?
Yeah, so the, part of the AOT process is a pretty detailed stormwater model, where we model everything within the site and everything from upstream drainage areas. And we account for soil conditions and culvert sizes. So as far as the design goes, as I mentioned earlier, it's very robust and probably overkill, honestly, because there's a lot of conservative assumptions. So I guess I can't speak to the, you know, anecdotal, you know, the history of what might have, what has occurred in that area in the past, but from the design standpoint, you know, everything within the site is very robustly accounted for. And if it's the across the road there, you know, we don't really have jurisdiction to do stuff within the road.
Just talking on the array side of the road, but it sounds like,
Yeah.
in fact, with the installation of a collection system, the drainage situation might actually be improved.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
certainly, yeah. It'll be improved compared to existing conditions. Like, as it sits today, right now, with this project, the drainage will be improved and redirected into newly installed ponds.
With that area where the entrance is, I don't believe there is currently a culvert at that existing airport driveway, but there will be one installed that goes under that driveway.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's,
Can I ask a point of clarification about how robust his modeling is? What's the maximum rainfall rate that you modeled for? You know, we get some summer storms through here where you might get 8 inches of rain. Have you cared for that? Or have you done stuff?
Yeah, we're part of the requirements is we use what's called an extreme precipitation table. It's from I believe it's from the state, but that's the basis of the model for all AOT permits, and it's very specific to the exact coordinates of where you're looking. So I don't know how they compile all this data, but each coordinate, each specific pin on a map will have its own individual output for rainfall data.
There's your rules and compliance thing. Because,
well,
with climate change, the rules, the historical perspective is out the window.
it's true, and that is a troubling issue. But I have talked with other engineers about it because it bothers me too. And one of the things I've been told is that they're constantly updating those numbers. I thought that it was a static thing, that they figured it out every 5 years or so. But in fact, those the 50-year storm, the 100-year storm, the 200-year storm, they're constantly upgrading the numbers based on recent storm events. So whatever are the latest numbers are the ones that the engineers have to use. So I know, but I hear you.
My issue is completely different than any of this stuff.
Okay, should we, would you like to,
One more thing on the.
one more thing?
the
Okay.
water. I live at 64 Wheeler. I own the road. There's easements for all the other houses. Number 9 Wheeler Lane was the first one when you come up on the right. 3 years ago, he lost his entire driveway to a point where he was at the top of his driveway saying, "Help, get me out of here," because he lost it. His whole driveway got washed out. And the end of Wheeler Lane got washed out. So we couldn't get out unless you had, good sized 4-wheel drive. But regular cars couldn't get out, so we had to bring a truck to gravel and all that. But, that could happen again easily. That was 3 years ago. So it's the rain that comes off the side of that mountain on, especially the right side when you go up Wheeler Lane, it really, really, it's significant to a point where we were watching it. Me and the guy he was on the top of his driveway, and I was down here, and we were like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So, you're saying it's robust, but it's gonna have to be, because I don't know if you're understanding how bad that water comes off the side of that hill.
It has nothing to do with this project.
Okay. Let me take your question.
I'm a pilot. Adrian Woods, my name, I'm a pilot. Frankly, my concern is the reflection off of these solar arrays. They are right around the approach end of the primary runway into the Keene Airport. You're going to get an early morning and afternoon, even with a 30-degree perspective, the sun's going to reflect right up into your eyes in the flight path, and it's going to get you with peripheral blinding. And that's, when you're trying to manage your height down the runway, you're using your peripheral vision. And with the arrays on both sides of the runway, and the north array, I was looking at that, my question earlier that I wanted to ask was, how close is this to the actual runway? That's taxiway alpha there. And then that is only, the main runway is right there, by perspective. And you've got this huge array, and the morning sun coming off that, you're going to get absolutely blinded if you're trying to land there in morning sun.
Have you had a chance to look at the glare analysis that's been prepared by this applicant? Because they have, and maybe you can put it into words for us, but we do have many pages of analysis that's been conducted. Megan, would you like to take a shot at that?
Great. Well, obviously, with the project being sited at an airport, we're diligent about glare. FAA allows for solar projects at airports. They've revised their policy over the years, and with additional data and with improvements in system design, they no longer, their policy no longer considers glare an issue for pilots on final approach. They do evaluate it for airports that have air traffic control towers, where there's the possibility for a static fixed point of reflection. We did perform the glare analysis as a matter of diligence and submitted that to the zoning board. And we prepared it here for the current design. The results are comparable. And it shows certain times of day where there will be a reflection. And there's a chart that shows the intensity and size of reflection. The report essentially shows that while there are limited instances during the year of what they call green glare, there are no instances of yellow glare, which is what would have a potential to have an after image or a visual impact. So we, in designing the system, of course, rely on the FAA, who has had a robust process for evaluating these systems. They used to require a stricter set of parameters, but based on their public feedback, they had a public feedback comment period, they reviewed research. In 2021, they made their final policy based on the data and the accumulated research that, air traffic control towers are the primary point of concern. And that, right. But otherwise, they found that solar panels don't introduce a novel glint or glare aside, in comparison to like features you would normally find in the environment, water or parking lots or that sort of thing. So we've performed an extra step of diligence that FAA currently feels is necessary based on their stringent requirements for this property. And we have to rely.
The airport director is satisfied with the degree of study that.
Yeah, I believe so. I'll let him assert to that if he would like. But we have prepared the study. We are in compliance with what FAA requires, and that's the guiding regulation that we have to go off of. And as I said, FAA permits solar projects at airports. They consider it allowed use, and they are gaining in popularity at airports across the U.S. and elsewhere.
Thank you. Yeah.
What's the most used?
We have no control tower here. Each and every pilot is responsible for his or her own safety at landing. And if something like this, if you don't know it's going to be there, a glare is coming in, you are screwed. I'm sorry. But that's the bottom line. You are in serious trouble. If you lose your perspective at that point in a flight, it's not going to end well. I'm lucky enough, I've been flying for 40 years, and I'm lucky enough, I touch wood somewhere, to be able to fly safely that whole time. But God help me the time something goes wrong, particularly if you've not only got the glare causing it, but these stanchions, putting the plane down in the middle of a field of metal pipes. I'm sorry, you're not going to walk out of there. And, the lawsuit that the City of Keene, and maybe even the Town of Swanzey Planning Board for allowing it, will be so big that you'll regret the moment it happens.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Is there a possibility, okay, we're going to continue this,
Yes.
correct? Before you come in, or when you come into your next meeting with us, of giving us some examples of where an array has been placed at the approach end of a runway, and what if any repercussions have occurred because of that? Or has your company done anything like that?
That's going to be a difficult, yeah, you can answer that, but I'm just talking to our planning board. Is this because of the position of this runway? You'd have to get one facing north and south. This is a north-south runway right here. You'd have to get the same thing facing north and south with the solar array at the end of the runway. And if you have one, fine, but I'm just explaining to him.
Yeah, I'm just trying to relieve his concern. I don't think they're valid concerns, because I believe the studies that have been done with the reflection off of the panels is down to a minimum. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do the one for the treatment plant.
We'll probably hear from the airport director about that, too.
Yeah.
But that's halfway down the runway. It's not in the approach area.
I'm not going to dispute that.
I mean, as far as additional comment, the glare analysis does give data on reflections in terms of where it would be seen at different times of the day in comparison to the approach area, and we followed the regulations that FAA puts forth for this project, and they have to be our guiding rule in citing this. Otherwise, we rely on speculations and facts and not what has been prescribed as policy. So that's all I can really say to that.
So, your point, brings up another question. I could see, based on the scaling of the map, that it's about 2,100 feet before the actual runway, but that area is designated to possibly someday extend that runway. And I don't know if that's, you know, a consideration for the airport itself. You know, to extend that runway can make it more commercial, get, you know, bigger planes in there, you know, get more traffic, drive people to the airport, right? Something that you guys have been working, well, not you because you're new, but we've been working towards for a long time, right? Develop the airport property. That's why these arrays are here and not maybe on the other side of the runway, is my understanding. So I guess, you know, the question or the concern, and maybe it's not a question, is will these arrays be even more of a concern if that runway was extended in the future? And I think the answer would be yes. So that's you know, a valid point.
The north array is immediately adjacent to the end of the beginning of the runway. The south array is 2,100 feet.
Right.
But the north
No,
array
you're absolutely right.
is
I got it right
immediately
here.
adjacent to the end of the
Yeah.
runway.
You're right.
With regard to the question of expansion, Ryan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the project will need a change of use permit from FAA, and I believe that one of the criteria they evaluate under that is whether or not it affects the future potential operations of the airport. And I do recall that we, you know, discussed with McFarland Johnson that the runway supports the largest aircraft that airport could serve.
Yeah, so an application or a request has been sent to the FAA to change the land determination from aeronautical use to non-aeronautical use. So ultimately, if the FAA has to give their blessing on being able to change that, the designation of the land from aeronautical to non-aeronautical. So if
What does that exactly mean to a layman?
to a runway?
To an average person? I mean,
So land on an airport is intended to be used for aeronautical use purposes as much as possible. Whenever you go to make a change for non-aeronautical use, for instance, if you have a business park on a larger airport and that doesn't support aviation business, but you have enough land to produce that, you have to get a request of change from the FAA.
Yep.
What that does for the runway is they'll look at it, and if they were to deem that we were limiting ourselves with the services that we could provide, you know, they could provide feedback and say, no, we're not going to grant the authorization to change. That hasn't come back in yet, but I don't see them doing that.
okay.
That's really helpful.
While you're right there, your FAA permit also looks at the glare, correct?
That's correct. So it is my understanding that when the 7460 was submitted, the glare analysis was submitted along with the 7460 application.
Okay,
Correct?
thank you.
Actually, it's not required.
No? Was it submitted as well, or it wasn't?
FAA only requires glare to be analyzed in the case where an airport has an interest in the tower.
Yeah, I remember reading that in there, yeah, that was the problem.
We were not formally required by FAA to prepare their analysis. We did it for our due diligence and those other.
So will it be submitted?
No, I don't believe it's submitted.
Will it be?
No, I don't believe
It will not be, okay.
It's an attestation that it was performed.
And as she had mentioned, we don't have an air traffic control tower, so based on the understanding that the FAA is going to make a determination on glare, specifically if you have an air traffic control tower, then that is a moot point for us.
Thank you.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
These houses, they're gonna get affected by this. It's not gonna affect the town of Swanzey whatsoever. There's a whole bunch of houses here. What, 2 years ago, without this big monstrosity, a plane ran into a house in Keene. I don't know if you remember, it was like the one over here.
without this being here. And there was children in the house, next to the house that got demolished, those guys all died. But the house where the kids got spared. That was just not too long ago. Without this here, a pilot ran into a house. I don't know if you remember this.
I do remember it.
Wasn't that long ago?
Well,
And that was before.
and it was
So if a plane can't see and runs into one of these houses, you gotta
Up the north end.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I think we're probably at a point where we should see if there are any other questions from the planning board, and then continue, if people are interested, continue this meeting until April 9th, after which point we will have been able to receive the review of the Conservation Commission looking for wetlands issues.
And just on that, the next Conservation Committee meeting is Monday, April 3rd,
It's Monday.
right here at 4 p.m. April 6th, okay. I won't be here.
Are there any other things that the planning board members would like to see depicted on the plans, or any other things that you'd like to have the applicant come prepared to address at this point?
I just have just one more thing, just to remember that the City of Keene got a variance to have this use on this property. You know, the planning board has to see that it abides by the site plan regulations, but the use, the planning board has no jurisdiction over the use. That has already been decided by the ZBA. And the time, I'm sorry, but the time to have those concerns about the use and what's it doing there was to present it to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I don't know if you were there or not, but I'm just bringing that up to clarify that. The planning board has to focus on the site plan review regulations regardless of what's there.
I attended the ZBA meeting, and I made comments about glare at that as well. So if those were ignored, then
I'm sure they're noted in the minutes, and we've all reviewed the minutes of that ZBA meeting, so thank you for that.
The only reason I know about this meeting is I got a registered mental letter in the mail. Otherwise, this other meeting we're talking about, I had no idea it was.
You should have gotten that. You were in the butter.
I think I got it for this one, about that.
So at this point, I'd entertain a motion to continue this public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
And that's the date. Just say the date.
Yes, to say, continue to April 9th, Wickham Hall at 6 o'clock.
Sorry, can we get a little quick from the applicant that it's like is a good date? I don't know if they want,
Good question.
It could be the second meeting in April if they want.
Your choice.
So, I guess I would like to confirm with the open item for us to address everything that we're working on.
All right, are you ready? So my primary thought was I'd like to see a landscaping page. I'd like to see additional screening, and if you choose the white pines, fine. I'd like to see those extend down, but I would like to see them planted in I'll call it a zigzag pattern, only because that grants greater screening, just a little line of soldiers, right, as they grow in. I hope that you'll review what the Conservation Commission has to say about additional plants that could perhaps be incorporated in the roadside screening, where if already pines are permitted, surely other species would be permitted in that area that would provide more habitat for insects and pollinators.
We have knotweed there already.
That's right.
It could be an opportunity to get rid of the knotweed.
Excuse me, I thought, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought the airport director mentioned that any landscaping or something is precluded.
From within,
Well-
around the arrays is what he was saying, I believe.
Well,
I'm talking about the roadside.
yeah, I think here again, you may run into a situation where the FAA is going to say no because the tree, as it's growing, is going to become an obstacle.
Yeah, which is why I'm questioning. I love the white spruce, but we'll look into that.
Well, we have a firehouse that's pretty high there, and I think that along the road should be fine for screening. as long as it doesn't attract the wildlife, the point that was made.
And that's what I have on my list. Richard asked about an array that has a similar configuration, but we're not sure if that's
Feasible or not?
feasible.
I hear that's probably not feasible and not considerable the orientation.
It does.
Do you have others? Oh, bonding. You wanna look at
Bonding,
Yeah.
but I need one of the single records available to attend the Conservation Commission meeting on April 6th. Because I think they would, the chair, Sherry, would like to know if somebody's going to be there. If not, I'm sure it's fine, they have the plans available for that.
I should be available for April.
They meet at 4 p.m.
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
Yeah. You'll contact Sherry? You'll contact Sherry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate to request that the FAA review consider non-tower airports for glare? And not
I
just,
have to defer that question to the airport
because
director.
it seems that that's, it's extremely low.
Yeah. Perhaps you could do that, Megan. You could discuss that question with the airport director and come back prepared to respond to that.
Sure, I can also respond to it now.
Okay.
Well, I have but the history is
Yeah, right
that
next door.
in 2013, FAA
Yeah,
that's what I thought. The required evaluation of their final approach.
I had a better map, but Richard gave it away.
In 2021,
Told him I had a better map
issued
until
their
you
final recommendation based on the
Yeah, it's right next
results
door.
and feedback
Yep.
they had received, that they're focusing to be on air control towers and not leisure airspace. So that is a policy, we can't persuade the cost with.
This is all the knotweed.
Change their policy on a smaller approach.
So their concern about glare is actually with the tower and not with the approaching planes, right? Yeah, that's what I thought from reading that, yeah.
Does anyone have anything else to put on the list?
No, as long as there's a clear list, that's all I'm concerned about. And so if anyone has any questions, anything like that, resolve tonight, just so that they can prepare overnight.
We ask this for an updated landscape page.
Would it be at all possible to show the entire, I know it's free, but rather than on separate pages, to show the entire 3 arrays on a single sheet?
I think we do have that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
We want to see the whole airport.
No, I think
property.
that's good, yeah, if you could.
You can have this.
What's that?
You can have this.
Do have that. All right, in that case,
There's a motion on the floor and seconded.
Yep.
Motion on the
did we vote?
No,
we didn't.
We didn't vote on
We
it?
didn't vote? Are we all in favor of continuing the hearing until, and you said that April 9th is all right?
I'm staying on the link. We get representatives to attend like, please.
Would you rather continue it until,
I think we're motivated to keep the process moving. If that's not feasible, is it acceptable to move in advance for the continued?
We have to renotice, so we can set it.
We could go to the 9th and postpone it again without renoticing,
Right, I'm sorry.
okay? So if they wanted to do that,
Yeah, so you guys can continue again on the night.
yeah. So, just let her know.
hey, Megan? We can keep it simple. We can continue it to the 9th and then we continue it again from that point until the following meeting.
Let's plan for the 9th. We'll plan to be there and it's
All right. All right, we all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
So this is a tough one for me.
Why?
Well, it's a tough one, but other things tough. Well, like this is sand, you know, I have to look at that and all this stuff. I know it's not a big reason stuff. I just, it's tough.
Maybe Adam
Like,
made it. Maybe it's Adams.
It's tough like the,
Let's continue right along, all right?
yes, we have to approve something that we know the people. I know, I'm just saying.
The next item on the agenda is a lieutenant application.
I'll get plenty of calls, let me tell you.
The order in the court.
Between you and I, the tax departments on it, I know they were right, but it's something if I didn't know, even if I don't get an offer, I got enough contacts, I'm gonna try to change that shit. Because they should have to probably, if they are making, in essence, the city of Keene is making money.
Yeah, thanks for addressing the ILS, because that was one of my questions. Like, it surrounds it.
Let's review this lieutenant application form. This is from Amanda Swanson, who is requesting to be a new tenant in a single-tenant building, which is located at 223 Monadnock Highway. She has a business, which is a small-scale dog boarding and daycare facility. We've already reviewed her site plan. We've already discussed she previously came to the board with a new tenant application form. We approved her site plan on March 12th with the condition that she attain all applicable licenses and permits, and it appears that she has done that. So, are there any questions regarding this? In which case, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion, we approve this new tenant application.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. And next is, do we want to continue with the site plan review?
I printed off your
My pen
I
scratch?
left them at the printer right now.
Good, because I was embarrassed by that. It was just chicken scratch.
Well, I think it's all stuff that I would have done.
Yeah.
But I will have it printed for sure. For anybody who's not aware, Victoria had a list of grammatical errors that are going to be fixed and that are going to be in the final.
Yeah, it was really just comments and capitalization, just consistency in grammar.
Yep, those are her details.
And a relocation of a sentence to, yeah. But it doesn't change the content, it just edits the content. So do we need any further action on that?
There was.
Okay, other people do.
I have something.
There's a quick thing on the last page of the packet, changing 5-year exemption to 7-year exemption. That's just to go in line with the RSA. The RSA changed from 5 to 7.
Yeah.
So there's no discussion on that. It's in the RSAs. We got to change it. And we are changing these now, so we might as well address it. The language isn't changed, just the title, just 5 to 7.
I've just got something under 6C, just go back to 6C. I think there's too much in that. I thought we had gotten rid of some of that there, but, you know, it reads down fine. Site plan approval will expire after a period of 1 year following the date on which the board votes to approve or conditionally approve the application unless within this 1-year period, active and substantial development has occurred. For site plans approved in phases, a determination of active and substantial development shall apply to the phase currently under approval. Fine, we already did all that. If a bond or other security is required in connection with such approval, such bond or security must be posted. We agreed on that. Active and substantial development shall include one or more of the following at the planning board's discretion. Then it goes into saying active and substantial development or building shall begin on the site by the owner. See, we need to stop it right there. I think we got rid of all that, correct? Because then it went right on to the site preparation or construction and this or that. Okay, so right from that point, all the way back down, it should be removed.
I wonder if we couldn't also remove, if a bond or other securities required in connection, such bond must be posted, because we already addressed that in
Several places, we address it. You know, I guess it's okay, we can remind them of it, but yeah, we have it in several places.
Yes.
Now, I just have something to bring up under the section 10 about the 5, or actually the 7-year exemption there. You know, we're talking about the requirements of RSA 674-39. Now, 674-39 gives them 3 years for active and substantial development. We give 1 year for that. So it's that if they don't prove the active and substantial development after 1 year, their approval expires. Yet they could go and say, well, the RSA gives me 3 years, so I can, you know, we'll say that the zoning changed after that 1 year we gave them. They can come in and say, well, you know, the state says I could have 3 years, and I can resubmit this application with the same, you know, zoning requirements because they cover me under 3 years. So it's just an interesting thing to think about. It's probably in our favor because we tell them that the thing expires and they don't have one anymore. But they may come in and say, well, I don't know, the state says that we can have 3 years, so we're coming in with that thing, you know, for the other zoning. That's only if the zoning changed after that 1 year. So just something to think about. We're in contradiction there slightly. It may never occur, but I'm saying if some wise guy developer came in and his expired and the zoning changed and he had to come back with the site plan under the new zoning, and he brings this RSA back in at us and says, hey, this says 3 years. So just read it over. We can think about it. Good one for the lawyer, too.
And
Cordell.
remember, it did used to say 5 years, which.
Oh, no, that's different. Yeah, it was a 5 years, but RSA 674-39 gives them 3 years for active and substantial development.
Okay.
The exemption here, yeah, we give them the 7-year exemption, but they have to do it within 3 years, active and substantial. We're saying you got to do it within 1 year. So there's a discrepancy between state RSA and ours. Usually we cannot be more stringent than the state, but this may be a fine line just because we tell them that it expires if you don't do it. You know, we're citing that RSA, but yet we're saying above that it expires after 1 year. But we cite that RSA that has only to do with the exemption. It's a gray area there, which Cordell might want to have to take a look at for us, just to see if we'd be on the hook for that, or if not, and just see what he says about it, maybe, and just the board just take a look at it.
He'll be reviewing this too.
Yeah, but if you would bring that up to him about the discrepancy between the 3 years and our 1 year.
Yeah.
No, we don't have any developers that take advantage of that, do we?
No, well, we cite that RSA, so.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we cite the RSA.
Yeah.
I think that's where it comes into issue, we cite it.
It
Because I know
may.
we can always, you know, we can always be a little bit more restricted.
Yeah, they give us leeway with our own, ordinance, but, we're citing the
You
RSA.
guys are citing it, no problem.
Can we delete this citation?
Let's just see what Cordell says about it. Yeah, I don't know, it's just, I'm bringing it up. It may never happen to us,
Yeah.
but just something to think about. That's all I had.
The majority of our applications, they follow through within a year they're built anyway, so, or pretty much along the way. We don't have many people backing out.
You had something?
Yeah, so, and this is probably for you, and you might already be aware of it. So we approved Patent Energy not too long ago, and they're required to put trays underneath their trucks. I meant to bring this up last meeting.
Chris.
Can you bring it to Chris, or?
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I stopped in there today and mentioned that to them, because there was a truck there today that had nothing underneath it
No, there's been trucks there for
before,
But
yes.
Richard, you can't do that. You're not enforcement. I mean, really, you can't do that, because you're a planning board member, and we give the enforcement to the selectmen, and they give it to the building code guy. So RSAs clearly state that we have no jurisdiction over enforcement at all. You can say that to them, and that's fine, but we can't really be going around doing that type of stuff.
Would you-
No, it has to be an official complaint, Chris. That's a hard
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
It needs to either be, it needs to be directly with Chris. I can't be a messenger, because it just doesn't.
Okay.
And then he has to deal with that.
Okay.
Chris does.
Next
I do
one.
understand, I totally understand.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
So the next one is where Mean Bee used to be. There's now Shrimp Family Oil in there. They have an oil and a septic truck parked behind that building. To me, that's a change of use, and that should have been something that would come in front of this board. Correct me if I'm wrong. That property also borders wetland.
You said the name of the original?
Mean Bee, it's right across from Sam's.
Route 12.
There was a detailing shop.
Oh, the detail shop?
Yeah.
Oh, that greenhouse?
It's
Is it
kind of like your.
There's a small
mustard,
garage right there on
yeah,
the,
yeah.
yeah.
So that borders wetlands on two sides. I know the property well. And I don't know, would that be something that should?
It's a request, again, again, it's a request to the selectmen or the code enforcement, either one. It can be brought right up at a selectmen's meeting, and they will give it to the code enforcement, or you can directly email the code enforcement.
Okay.
That's what I've done in the past, Mark, is I've got a hold of Chris, that is the code enforcement, and let him know what's going on, and he went out and checked on it.
Yeah, it actually, so I do attend a lot of select board meetings too. That's another good way to get this information out there.
Yeah.
At the public comment portion of the select board meeting. That's a pretty good way to do
No,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll take whatever avenue.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, just if you're not.
this is an area I've never, I'm kind of like, yeah, these two things bug me. Actually, the third one too.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of examples of new tenants changing uses that haven't been seen by this board, that, I can internally bring to Chris and whatnot, we can work on. But,
Okay.
yeah, anything that you guys see, select board meeting or official complaint to Chris, best way for it to get seen.
Okay.
I know when I worked with Mike Jasmine in the past, and Chris is the same way, that a letter or an email to him gets a little bit quicker action than going to the select board first.
I know how busy Chris is, but yeah, either way.
At one time, I had Mike Jasmine running around trying to clean up all the junkyards around. I kept giving him lists. It's still not all.
It's just a third entity in the building that the brothers purchased. There's a third company in there, and once again, our borders Wilson Pond, so I'm always concerned. There's a lot of shipping containers back there now.
I do have an update on that.
Okay.
So they have been contacted for a new site plan. We're working on it.
Okay.
There's a couple sites in the town of Swanzey right now that need to update their site plan to reflect their current conditions. The tire warehouse building, I don't know, Full Brewers, what's that place called?
Full throttle.
Thank you. Full Throttle and the Brothers. So we have contacted these people to update their site plans. It's varying degrees of success, and any enforcement action will go through the code enforcement officer, select board, and however much it needs to escalate from there.
Thank you, Adam.
Did you want us to look at the wetlands?
Yeah, I only printed it. I also emailed it out. Look at it, comment on it, send it to me. There's no huge rush. There will be a rush when we have interest in applying for a conditional use permit. So I know our next meeting might be with snacks. If you can get me comments by the next meeting, great. We need to finalize that permit, and we also need to address fees. That's going to be maybe a larger conversation, but the fee discussion will need to come at the same time.
We discussed fees a while ago. Did we end up increasing fees?
We haven't decided anything, but when we discuss fees for the conditional use permit, we also want to discuss other fees that maybe we do reflect current pricing.
I have something which is an email I received from Sarah Bollinger saying that there are quarterly gatherings hosted by Southwest Region that they call Citizen Planner Peer-to-Peer Roundtable Series. And This next one is going to be in Stoddard, and the topic will be the Director of the Initiative for Housing Policy and Practice at St. Anselm College will provide an overview of the New Hampshire Zoning Atlas, which will look at how zoning influences housing development as well as childcare availability. I plan to go, and one other person can come if they want to come, or just let me know. It's Tuesday, March 31st, from 5:30 to 7:30, Stoddard Town Hall.
Is there a fee associated with that?
No, and they have snacks.
I'm just saying, if there's ever a fee associated with any training, please let me know. We are budgeted for a certain amount per year, so we will cover any training related.
Are they gonna have a in-person conference this year, or is it all gonna be online still?
It's been in person for a while.
I know, but I didn't see the last one to come out yet, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends what the conference will like, exactly. There's a general planning conference. This year is the last week of October, second to last week of October, but there's other general conferences throughout the year covering different topics. And Adjournmen has a calendar on their website that goes through some trainings that they do. I'm more on the legal end, but I can give you some resources.
Right. I get more out of it when I go in person than I do trying to watch a video.
Totally understand. Yeah, me too.
The box lunches aren't good for us sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything?
I'll give you an update. There's a wastewater committee, and let's see, there's only one other member of the board here who's on it, right? Yeah, you're on it there. So anyway, that committee is looking at, there was a study done by the engineering company, Underwood, on the West Swanzey wastewater treatment plant down there. And there's a meeting this Thursday at 10 o'clock here, next Thursday at 10 o'clock here, about that engineer's study. So what that study is pretty much recommending is either building a whole new wastewater treatment plant there, which would be an activated sludge plant, not a lagoon system, at the cost of around $26 million. And the other alternative they're suggesting is to pipe it all the ways to Keene at a cost of about $15 million. There's not much in there that addresses fixing this plant down here. They just addressed those two concerns about either building a plant, which anybody knows that would help it, and trucking it to Keene or pumping it to Keene, which anyone would know that would solve the problem. So we'll be discussing that, and that's a big money figure there. Boy, that's 15 million or 26 million bucks there. And I think there are other ways to look at that plant and possibly fix it. And that's the other thing. That might not occur for another 3 to 5 years, because that has to coincide with the Lower Winchester Street project if they pump it. It looks like they're leaning to pump it up to Keene. So in that meantime, they're violating now. They will be violating it as of, what is it, the 1st. Yeah, that's when the phosphorus comes in there. So the state has let them get away with violating our plant here for at least a year, if not more, which is completely unheard of. I mean, they're usually right down our necks. But anyway, the point is that even if that is decided to do for our town, we still have to figure out a way and spend money to fix that plant, to have it not violate for the next 3 to 5 years until something else is done, and then continue. So, you know, if you have any suggestions or thoughts or anything about that, I have some. I'm going to bring them up at the meeting.
Nobody flush your toilet.
Well, it's tough, but it's might be cost effective to look at another engineering company as well. I mean, Underwood Engineering is okay. They've been around with us for a long time. We've used them down at the treatment plant before for other things, but
would you be able to interview certain engineering companies prior to?
That'd be the selectmen probably do. I'll bring it up to them. That'll be the selectmen that would decide on that and do that. But I'm just thinking this company may not have the experience with lagoon systems, even wastewater, that other companies do. They may have maybe 15 years experience, which sounds like a lot, but it isn't a lot in that field. And they also now they have an operator down there with like over 30 years' experience in lagoon systems, which he may have some insight as to what to do. Well, he's going to have to, because he's going to have to not violate, well, sometime this summer, I would think. The problem is phosphorus, and you're violating phosphorus if you have more than 1 milligram per liter going out into the river there, and that means 1 part per million is what that is.
It's small.
It is small. I'll tell you how small that is. Let's see. 1 milligram per liter is if you got $10,000, converted it to pennies, and one of those pennies in there is that 1 milligram per liter. If you could find that one penny in that pile of $10,000 worth of pennies. So that's how small they're going. Well, they're going smaller with our copper number and our aluminum number. They're going to they're going to, what was it now? I think maybe 80 parts per billion and maybe 3 parts per billion. And to put that one in context, let's see, if you took $10 million and converted that to pennies, 82 parts per billion would be 82 pennies out of $10 million worth of pennies would be the amount that they're allowing you to put out into the river. So
Ridiculous.
it is ridiculous, but as
It
the
is.
process gets better, they get smaller and smaller and smaller and tighter and tighter and tighter with these regulations, and they stick it onto us. All these towns, little towns, big towns, no matter what it is, we have to do something about it without them really helping us there, you know, with their loans and all that types of stuff, but it takes a lot, and we're all competing for those. So we're going to be hit with been hit with an aluminum number, and we were hit with a copper number. They hit us with aluminum, and all these plants with aluminum, because to remove the to remove the phosphorus, we were using something called polyaluminum chloride, which is PAC they call it, and that has aluminum in it, and it works great. But they were finding that, well, hey, you know, you got rid of the phosphorus, but you're putting aluminum into the river, only because you made us, because we had to get rid of the phosphorus. So now they put a number on aluminum, which pretty much negates the use of that aluminum without a secondary treatment to get rid of the aluminum. So in our plant down here, we can get rid of that phosphorus, but we will have a higher aluminum number. But we could use another coagulant probably to get rid of the aluminum and the copper residual that they're asking us to get rid of as well. So it looks like that's probably the route that we're going to have to go, even temporarily. But if we go temporarily, we might as well go see if we can go permanent that way. I might be getting too long on this.
No, go on.
Okay,
This is
but
interesting.
so we had in 2000, that plant had an upgrade, and they upgraded the design flow to be about 119,000 gallons a day. At that point, we were running probably 60,000 gallons a day in that plant. Now, our permit flow is 160,000 gallons a day, so we would not be violating our permit if we put 160,000 gallons a day out there. But design flow is for the load flow. It means that if you go more than that, we'll say 119,000 gallons a day, then your numbers of nutrients going out of the river will probably be too high. So anyways, getting back to 2000, upgrade, they gave us a design flow of 120,000 gallons a day, we'll say 119. We're doing 60. Right now, they're doing probably about 75 or 80,000 gallons a day. That's 26 years later. So that's not much. It's with the low flow toilets and all that type of stuff is helping with that. So do we really need a higher design flow at that plant? You know, we've got we'll say another 20 years, we might maybe be to that 120,000 gallons a day. If we do the temporary fix with clarifiers or something like that in the plant, we aren't going to need to build a whole new plant. In my opinion, we don't need a whole new plant for something like that. But it's going to be a big hit for the town if we do vote to do either of those two. So, and I don't even know if we get the voters to do that, because
Probably won't.
they
That's a
just
big number.
wouldn't even vote for the highway garage, you know, to get that.
How common are these lagoon systems?
They're quite common. They work better in the higher temperatures, like down south, but they work fine up here. Swanzey has one, Westmoreland has one, Troy has one, let's see, Peterborough, I think, might have one, I don't know. The thing about lagoon systems is that they take up a fair amount of space, but they do the same thing as an activated sludge system, which takes up a much smaller footprint and is faster at treating the waste. And treating the waste, what you're doing is taking the biological demand, what they're calling it, out of the effluent that goes into the river. Anything that's considered food for bugs is removed by that treatment process, either in the lagoon system or in the activated sludge. So we're still going to have to do that. It's the metals thing and the phosphorus that is a problem. And we've proved that we can do that with the pack here. So, I don't know. Anybody have any ideas about how much that's going to cost? I don't know, but...
How is Keene handling this?
Keene has an activated sludge plant. And Keene has, we are not contracted with Keene, but we own 280,000 gallons a day to go into Keene. That's because of North Swanzey, and we paid for part of their revamp up there.
Right.
So they can handle our sludge, we'll say, our wastewater, but we'll still have to pre-treat that wastewater before it goes up there with probably screening things, get grit out of it, things like that. So there is an advantage that way. You don't have to run a plant, but you still have to run a collection system, and you still have to run a pump station, and you still have to be on the hook to pay whatever Keene charges you. And what that is based on is how strong your effluent is, or influent is, going into the Keene plant times the flow.
And that could change.
That can change, yeah. Or that would probably change, have to be negotiated with Keene if we ever did that.
Where does the Keene plant empty into? Does that go into the Ashwillet as well?
Ashwillet River, yeah.
Do they have to go into a river? Do they have to expel their...
They don't have to. That's another point down here.
That's what I was
We
going to
have
get
100
at.
acres of leach
Yeah.
field out there. I mean, we could land
Exactly.
apply, and we're not talking about land applying influent, which is untreated. We're talking about land applying the water that goes out into the river, which it just has
Onto the-
phosphorus, which is a nutrient for plants. You know, that'd be a nice way to do it out there.
So reroute the pipe that goes into the river out into the field instead? Is that what you're...
It'd have to be a two-fold thing. It'd have to be a seasonal. Probably from April 1st to October 31st, we'd be irrigating out on that field if we did that. That way you wouldn't have the phosphorus number for the river, or nitrogen for that fact. You get away with that. You wouldn't be putting anything in the river. But after that, the ground kind of freezes, and we don't have the phosphorus number anyway, so we could put into the river for the winter.
You could almost put like a Y in there to divert it out into the field during the months that you have to treat for phosphorus.
I'm not sure, I don't know how they do that. You know, I don't know if they would land apply with irrigating, what do they call them? Mobile irrigation like you see down in Northfield. You've seen that down there? I don't know if they would do it with that, or if put in pipes for like a leaching field, because it's all sand down there. And again, every year they spray liquid cow manure on that field, you know, for the hay right up to the river down there. I mean, we're just talking about water. But yeah, that's something else that we might want to consider, getting an easement for that, if we could do that down there. There are a few ways we can do it, but none of those are mentioned in the report. The only thing that was mentioned in the report was build yourselves a new plant or truck it up to Keene.
That'll be $100,000.
100,000, oh.
Is that what you said? How much did it cost to have those engineers do
Somebody passed a
that?
cup to Mike Gamon.
That's what we paid the engineers.
Paid them $100,000
Yeah.
to give us those
Well,
two answers.
Yeah, there's a little more in the study than that, but the stuff in the study is mainly what we have down there. And the rest of the recommendations were, yeah, those two for that amount of money. So that's an update on what we're doing there. Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry about that, yeah.
Some of us haven't eaten yet.
It's a big one.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.